Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Ape Nation, your number one source for all things Planet of the Apes on YouTube. My name is Josh, and today we have another guest here on the Ape Nation channel, co-star of the latest entry in the Planet of the Apes franchise, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Anaya himself, Travis Jeffery. How you doing, Travis?
Very well. Very, very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. I'm very excited to talk to you. Loved you in the movie. You were a highlight for me. And I guess the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was your, I guess, exposure and familiarity with the franchise prior to getting on board. How familiar with you were Planet of the Apes before getting the role?
I I loved the franchise. I think I saw the OG when I was about 13. And I really fell in love with the world from there. It's such a for a 13-year-old, it's terrifying. It's this, I haven't seen anything like it before, and it really kicked off my fascination with the world and with the stories and then the last trilogy. I was such a huge fan of. I've always been, a massive fan of Andy Serkis, as most people are, because he's the GOAT. So I never thought I would ever be involved in the franchise, but I've always been in love with it. So to be a part of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was such a dream come true, and to be a part of this franchise was just, it was very, very surreal. So I have followed the franchise for a very long time. So it's really amazing to be on this side of it now.
That's awesome. It's got to be a really surreal experience for you.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm still still kind of pinching myself, and it still feels very surreal. I remember on our very first day of Ape School, um, Nico, who was there kind of looking after us and helping us get in, doing everything we needed to do around Disney Studios in Sydney. He was like, "How you feeling?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm feeling pretty cool." He's like, "This is this is a franchise film. This is a legacy franchise." I was like, "Okay, well, now you put it like that, I'm a little bit nervous, a bit more nervous than I was 5 minutes ago." So it's just lovely coming across people on either side of the camera that it's just as big a fan as I was, but yeah, it's still very, very surreal.
That's awesome. So speaking of Ape School, jumping ahead a little bit here,
Yeah.
what was it like that whole? Because I've heard Owen talk about it. I've heard other cast members talk, and Wes talked to me a little about Ape School. What was that whole experience like? Like, what was it like, and what were you doing in all the preparation for playing an ape?
Yeah, it was just amazing. It's kind of the best way to describe it. In itself, it's like this whole experience for me. It was surreal. To hear that you have 6 weeks of ape school or training or rehearsals is such a luxury. You don't ever really get that. Especially in Australia, our budgets are smaller. There's less time, so kind of you're rocking up day one, having to do all your own prep as an actor, which you usually do, and then you might be meeting the cast for the first time on day one, or a read through a week before you start shooting. So to have 6 weeks was just it was such a gift, and it was just beneficial in so many ways. Obviously the physicality is an incredibly important part of Planet of the Apes. Making sure that we honor what has come before us, and really um, do our best at the physicality. But then on the other side of that was the relationships that we created in Ape School. It's very much being like back in drama school. Anybody who's listening to this has done any sort of film school, drama school, you do a lot of silly stuff, and you spend most of the time feeling like an idiot, going like, if anybody was to walk past and look in this window, they would be like, what are those people doing? And Ape School was very similar. We're running around, we're screaming, we're doing 45-minute impros as chimps. Um, it was amazing. And I think what bonded us was seeing how much every cast member was putting in to this situation that could be ridiculous from the outside. You just kind of have to throw yourself in and trust. Our movement coach Elaine was just so beautiful, and had structured it so well that it was just, a really, really smooth process of kind of building these characters all together. So that really brought us together. I loved it. I love movement. I've always loved movement. So to spend 6 weeks just honing in on movement and then getting to build character together and helping other characters build, build their characters too, other actors build their characters. I think we all just left Ape School with such a feeling of ownership over our character, over the story we were telling, and just a real trust. Lids and Owen and I kind of, they're the two that I work most closely with in the film. And even on a big film like this, it moves fast when you get to the shoot. Sometimes Wes will rock up and he's like, I've had an idea. This is what we're doing today. And you can just go like, okay, I trust you. I trust Wes. I trust Lids. I trust Owen. And you just jump into these scenes knowing that no matter what you do, you know who you are, you know who Anaya is, no matter what they do, you know how to react, you know that they're just going to trust you and react to what you do. So it was just, having this 6 weeks together was just genius in so many ways. So it was a really, really amazing experience.
It sounds like it was a lot of fun for everyone involved.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah.
and I know you got to basically be taught by Andy Serkis. What was that like? What was that whole experience like?
That was another surreal. This whole process has just been, a series of surreal moments, pretty much. So to be able to be mentored by Andy was just incredible. He's so generous. At the time, I think he was prepping Animal Farm. He was a busy man. I think it was quite late when he was calling in from London to help us here in Australia, where we were shooting and preparing. And just to have his knowledge, it was just really fantastic. It just lifted us and helped instill in us the confidence that we needed in what we had been preparing and what we're about to do. Because a lot of us had never done motion capture before. I think Owen had done a tiny bit of it. So it was a new world to us, but they really looked after us. It was kind of on the job training for a lot of this, on the job training with the physicality, becoming a chimp, and then on the job training with the technology. So to have Andy there kind of running us through scenes, kind of talking through his thoughts, and he's just as, you can see that he remembers Caesar like it was happening yesterday. You just instantly jump into it. And you're like, wow, that was as good as anything I saw on the big screen. But to have his knowledge of the biology and the way the way that he brought Caesar to life, it was a great insight, and it really helped us. And then when we moved into the studio, into they call it the volume, which is our play space. So you're kind of on this big gray mat with cameras everywhere, and they start to pick up your infrared suits, your dots. Towards the end of Ape School, we got to hop in, and they were live sort of feeding onto a screen us with a puppet. It wasn't quite Anaya yet, it wasn't quite Soona, it wasn't Noah. It was a puppet that we could just see how our body looked, how our movements would look, so we could see how the training was sort of coming across on screen. And we had Andy there with us, kind of talking us through through it, being like, okay, we'll get a bit lower. And Elaine, our movement coach, was there as well, move your arm this way, hold your neck maybe like that. But the thing that's amazing about Andy is he spent so long doing it, he's become now a master of the other side as well. So he could just the technical aspects, and talking to WETA, who are absolute geniuses, and they were so gentle and kind and helpful to us throughout this process as well. But to see Andy be like, okay, Trav, lower your arms a bit, and okay, guys, can you bring his elbows up a little bit? Can you curve his lower back a bit more? So it's a real mix of our preparation with the technology, and Andy was just such a master of both. So it was really wonderful to see him work, and it was great to meet him, and just see that he is just this amazing human being that everybody says he is. He's so kind and generous with his time, and he's just a genius. So it was really, really fantastic.
That's awesome. I love anytime I hear a story about Andy Serkis, it's nothing but positivity and love. So I love
Yeah.
hearing that about him. And what was there any like specific advice or anything like that that he gave you that really helped you throughout the process of making this?
Yeah, definitely. you know, he spoke a lot about just the truth of it. And I think that's what's really beautiful about Planet of the Apes and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is just it is very human emotions. You know, these chimps have evolved to feel as we feel, and I think that's why people love watching them, because you can see these emotions, see your emotions in these chimps. So we spoke a lot about the truth of the scenes. You know, what do these characters want? What are they doing? And he's a fantastic director as well. You know, he's not only a brilliant actor and a brilliant technician with all the technical side of things, but he's an amazing director. So he he's really intelligent in the things that he asks, the questions that he asks, you know, and he'll kind of help you dive deeper into your character by kind of asking questions and letting you answer them, which helps you discover as you go. So I think the main thing that came from him was just, you know, playing it for the truth, playing the truth of these situations. And you can see it. That's what I got really excited about going back and watching the last trilogy when I found out that I'd gotten the role. And just I think the last time I'd seen them was probably in the cinema when they'd come out in the cinema. So it'd been a couple of years, and just rewatching it and just seeing how much it still stands up, and kind of now analyzing it, going like, oh, I can see why these work so well, because it's just all, you know, here. So much of Andy's performance is just the eyes, you know, which is what most, you know, great actors do on screen. It's all kind of show don't tell. So it was really 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 great getting that insight from Andy, and you know, we took that into the shoot, and it was really helpful. You know, we trained so much that the movement became second nature, the speech became second nature, that we could just kind of be alive with each other in these scenes, playing these moments for truth.
That's all. It just sounds like it was such a unique experience. Like I can't imagine what it was like on top of being taught by Andy, just getting together with all these people and learning how to act like a chimp in
Yeah,
body suits and with
yeah,
stilts and all these kind of things. And it just seemed like it was such a fun experience, a unique experience, and it clearly pays off because your work,
yeah.
everyone, all of your work in the movie is fantastic. It's just so
Thank you.
life. It's a really cool thing that I love is that you're all able to do this thing where you're very clearly physically moving like apes and it's very realistic, but there's a human quality to it as well that you're obviously not going to get from a real chimp that you all bring to it, and it works. And it's really cool. And I think you guys all did a fantastic job in that regard.
Thank you. That means a lot. And you know, I'm really proud of the film, and um yeah, I'm glad that people have responded well to it. And yeah, I think it's because it's relatable. You know, it's not anything that humans haven't done. You know, in one of the EPKs, Joe Hardwick, the producer, talks about why he thinks audiences still love um, Planet of the Apes after so long. And you know, he makes a really good point that it is we're fascinated to see if chimps will make the same mistakes as humans do. You know, because they are so human. When they start to evolve, will they follow the same patterns as humans? You know, humans in the film have obviously destroyed themselves, and will chimps make those same mistakes? So I think it's just such a brilliant franchise for conveying those messages through such an entertaining way as well. You know, and I think everybody did such great jobs of creating these beautiful, detailed, complex characters. You know, there's no caricatures in there. It's human emotions within the chimps, which is what they are evolving to be. So I think that's why people fall in love with these films and fall in love with these characters, because you can see yourselves in these characters.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's something that I've always loved is that there's an element of like a mirror on our own society with Planet of the
Yeah,
Apes. You see human characteristics and humans traits, but through apes. And I think that's just
yeah,
something that it makes it I think one of the most unique franchises that exist. And it's really, it's always interesting and exciting to see how they play with that idea, which they did a lot of in Kingdom. And I loved seeing that.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really genius way of telling a story, because there is a separation. You know, we're holding a mirror up, but you're looking at a chimp. So I think humans are more likely to absorb these messages because we don't feel like we're looking at humans. We don't feel judged watching it. You know, you come away from it going like, wow, those chimps didn't treat each other very well. And then when you start to think about it, you go, oh, wait, hang on. It's kind of what we're doing to each other, you know, whereas I feel humans shut down very
Yeah.
quickly when you're looking at a human. You know, that's why I've always been such a fan of these films, but also Pixar and Disney animation, because I feel it's easy to separate and just sit back and relax and enjoy and absorb when you don't feel attacked, you know, when you're not looking at your face on the screen or, you know, a human's face. So I think it's a really genius way to tell a story, a really genius way to convey really important messages.
Yeah, I totally agree. So something you mentioned earlier is that time you got to spend with all your castmates and specifically Owen Teague and Lydia Peckham. And I wanted to know when it comes to, because I think the chemistry between the three of you is fantastic. It's
Yeah,
one of my favorite parts of Kingdom is the trio of Noah, Soona, and Anaya. I think it is just instantly within the first 5 minutes of the movie. I loved all three of you. I was already excited to go on this adventure with you before you all get separated 30 minutes into the movie.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but um, but yeah, I really loved the three of you, and I was curious, that chemistry, was that something that you three had to work on, had to prepare, and how much time did you have to work on it, or was it something that kind of just came naturally as you were going through all of it?
Yeah, look, I think it came really naturally. They're both such wonderful human beings, so generous, such generous actors, and just great people. I guess when you kind of think about it, we did work on it as a by like the relationship from Ape Camp was a byproduct. We got in there, we were, you know, in there to learn how to be chimps, but we just spent all day, every day playing. You know, and on the week, so Lids is from New Zealand and Owen's from America, so they didn't know Sydney. So I live in a place called Coogee in Sydney, which is near the beach. So we'd hang out at the beach on the weekends, and you know I could show them around, and it was just we just became really really good friends. Um, so we never had to work really hard. It never felt like work because we were just bonding and getting to know each other, and we knew, you know, I knew that it was really important, and the relationships were a really important aspect of the film because of where the film goes. You know, you wanna fall in love with the beginning of the film, with this beautiful with Eagle Clan, you know, and the way they live and the joy and the freedom they have. So then when it all goes wrong, it hits harder, you know. So I knew that was a really important part of of the film and of our preparation. But it never felt like work, which was great, and it just felt like us having fun. And you know, it's so glad to hear that you think it works, and a lot of people think it works. And a few weeks into the shoot, the studio came back and they were like, "Hey, we're really happy with how the trio is working. You know, it really reads." Um, and I think it's, you know, a lot to do with Ape School. I think it was just such a smart thing to do, and Wes and Joe do that a lot. You know, they spoke about when they were doing the Maze Runner trilogy, doing a camping trip, and because you can't, you know, you can pretend to be really good friends, but it's just always so much more authentic when these relationships are real, when you've created that bond, when you've, you know, found that trust with each other. So yeah, we just kept getting closer and closer and closer through over the shoot, and yeah, it's good to hear that it reads.
Yeah, it does, and I think the most impressive thing about it, because you see some of the most iconic and beloved character trios and character groups throughout all the movies, and most of them are just traditional human characters in live action. That with you guys, you're having to do that and portray that, and then also have it come across through CGI. And I think it's all that more,
Yeah,
much more impressive that you're able to get that feeling and that friendship that you say is so natural. It comes through across in
yeah, glad.
motion capture CGI characters.
Yeah, and I think that's a, you know, a huge testament to how brilliant WETA are, and you know their incredible work. Because going into it, I didn't know how much would translate, how much you know, how much they would keep our performances, or were we just the movement canvases? Um, so to see the final product and to recognize Owen's beautiful choices, or moments that I remember Lydia doing, and seeing them come through as a chimp. It was just mind blowing. It was really, really beautiful to see this collaboration of our craft, our art form, and WETA's craft and art form. It was such a collaboration. Because to begin with, and Lydia always was like, "You got to stop saying this," but I was like, "Hey, we could just be 1% of this. We could just be the puppets, and then they do whatever they want." She's like, "No, but no, we do a lot of the work," and we did. We worked really hard, and we worked tirelessly to get these characters. And Weta really honored that. They honored our choices. They honored what we wanted, what we brought to the character and to the scene. So to see it translate so well was just it was amazing. And it's just Weta, blew my mind every day. But to see the final product, it's just, yeah, they're incredible.
So speaking of Weta, who, by the way, like you're right. They're wizards. They're incredible.
Literal wizards, yeah.
What they've done with every single movie and show that they've ever worked on is nothing short of perfect. I think they do incredible
Yeah.
work. And what I want to know is for you guys, how much are you seeing when you're on the set? Are you seeing nothing or not even like previs, anything like any sort of digital version of what you might look like on the day, or do you have to wait a few weeks, or do you not get to see anything until it's almost completely done?
No, so there's a bit of previs, kind of more like what I was talking about when we were training, just the puppets. They would have very rough sort of puppets. Either a chimp or an orangutan or a gorilla. For Ika. Yeah, so we could see a little bit. We could see how it was translating. By the time we got to the shoot, I think we were all so, they trained us and prepared us so well. That more so, if we ever watch playback, there'd be a lot of playback, because on set there'd be, 4 or 5 performance capture cameras going on. So one would be, focused on Owen, one would be focused on Lids, one would be focused on me. So this is for Weta to use later. But then we could go, the monitors were the most confusing thing I'd ever seen. They've got all the performance capture cameras, and then you've got the main camera, and then you've got the live sort of puppet feed where you can see us as chimps. So there were little bits of everything that were really useful and we could use. And that was more so in the studio. It was a little bit trickier when we're outdoors, because the technology is so versatile now. So we did shoot a lot of this on location in Australia, in the Blue Mountains, and sort of down in a place outside of Wollongong, which is a city down south. So when we were on location, it was a little bit trickier to see all that kind of stuff, because they just had all the amazing toys set up in the studio. But yeah, there was constantly help that we had, and Elaine, our movement coach, was on set all day, every day, probably the hardest working man on set. He never got a break. So he would always be a second set of eyes for us as well. He'd come in and be like, what's your hands? Remember your hands, or remember your feet when you jump there. Your feet, you're a little bit human. So there was just so much support. And Lids and Owen and I would ask each other questions, and Owen's American, so helping with accent, and we'd help each other with bits and pieces. So it was a really it's the best shoot I've ever been on, just from start to finish. Just the most lovely bunch of people. I've had an incredibly lucky career. I've worked with a lot of amazing people, and I haven't really had many negative experiences, but this one, just from start to finish, the support and the love and the joy was just there from day one. So it was a really wonderful shoot. And as you said, I think you can feel that in the first half of the film, at least, when there is the joy in the film, you can really feel that come across.
Yeah, it's I'm very excited to see potentially where those three characters go in the future and more.
Me too.
I just want to see more of them together, because anytime some of my favorite moments in Kingdom, I just rewatched it a couple nights ago, and some of my favorite moments are just the three of you. There's a moment in the beginning of the movie where you three are just kind of joking around, messing with each other. They're all Soona and Noah are picking on you because you were scared. Like
Yeah.
those little moments of just the three of you having fun and being young adults, I think it's kind of a new thing for Planet of the Apes in a way, and I really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that was my favorite stuff to shoot as well. All the fun. And I think you're right. It is new, and I think it's really smart. I think it's really beautiful to show that now. With the last trilogy, it's such an establishing trilogy, but these chimps are in conflict all the time. You know, it's a fight. You know, rise, war, dawn. It's all just fighting for freedom. So I think it's really beautiful to see these chimps in a time of peace. You know, and just seeing them how they live when they are not being chased by humans, when they're not destroying each other, when they're not in conflict. So I think what Wes did so beautifully is just to set up this, and you know, it's smart because it makes it more hard. It makes it hurt more later setting it up the way it does. But it's just really beautiful to see these chimps living their best lives. You know, living in a time of peace, and it's a great way to get people on board quickly. You know, the fun, I feel that the fun is addictive, and it's, you know, you want to champion these characters because the cheekiness and the fun and the play. So yeah, I remember saying to Owen and Liz on set, because we kind of almost shot chronologically. We definitely shot a lot of the beginning of the film early on, and I remember when it started to shift into Proximus world, I was like, oh, we all have to grow up now. You know, we can't play chasey anymore. And I got really sad because I was like, oh, as an actor, I was having to shift into a darker world as these characters were, and you know, it really hit home. You know, I remember standing on set with Sarah Wiseman, who plays Dar, and it was the day after the raid. You know, the big raid in the film, and we were looking at the destroyed Eagle Clan, and it was heartbreaking. And this was just me standing off to the sidelines because we created such a beautiful family and a beautiful world, and it was, yeah, it was heartbreaking. And I knew then that I think, well, you know, to me, it's a really special film because of the relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite aspects of the movie. All the relationships, whether it be you three or Noah and Raka or Noah and May, like all the and Noah and Proximus even, like I think all the different dynamics between all the different characters are one of the highlights. And I think that, I mean, to be honest, that's just always an aspect about movies that I love is relationships
Yeah.
between characters. And I think that one that you three created is one of my favorites that I've seen come out of Planet of the Apes in a very long time.
Right. Thank you.
So something else you mentioned earlier is how a lot of you guys were new to performance capture. Was it, this was your first time or had you done,
Yeah.
it was your first time? Okay. So how did it compare to what you've been used to, just doing a traditional live action role?
Yeah, it's completely different. To begin with, it can feel very overwhelming. You know, you're in quite a tight suit. You've got dots all over your face. You've got a helmet with a camera right in your face. Your movement feels a little bit restricted. You've got battery packs on your back. So you kind of put it on for the first time. You go, I can't move like a human, let alone a chimp. How's this going to work? But we got used to it, and it kind of almost became your second skin. You know, there was lots of times when we first started where, you know, you got to hug Owen or Lydia, and we'd be sword fighting with our camera, and you can see Weta on the edge going like, oh my god, these cameras are worth more than you guys. Please be careful. But you slowly just incorporate it into the performance, and you just and you get used to it. And I really enjoyed it. I remember my first shoot after I finished Planet of the Apes, I actually felt naked playing a human again. I was like, I don't have my camera or my helmet on or my skin tight suit with all my dots. What am I doing? So it took a bit of getting used to, but it becomes second nature by the end of it. And I really enjoyed the experience in the acting sense of it, because it became, you know, I feel like this kind of work is a lot of imagination work. You know, you have to really lean into your imagination. I've done a lot of war films over my career. I've been very lucky to play a lot of soldiers and get to, you know, privileged to tell those stories. I think I've played 8 soldiers over my career. And a lot of that is, you're on set, you're wet, you're muddy, you've got a rifle, sometimes you're firing blanks. They've built trenches, all this kind of stuff. So there's a lot more outer stimulus coming at you. They try to get it as close to real as possible. Whereas with something like this, when you're in a studio, maybe they've put down a box for you to jump on, or a pole that's a tree that you can cling off. So it was a great experience for building that world in your mind, and then watching it come to life, and then realizing your mind is nowhere near as good as Wes's mind. What he can create. But what's similar between live action and then motion capture is the relationships. It's just you're me and you in a scene, and that was such a good anchor point. Is you always knew that no matter what was going on in a scene, no matter how fake it all was, or how much you had to imagine, that you could look in Owen's eyes, you could look in Liz's eyes, you look in Kevin's eyes, and that would just bring you back in, because everybody was so into it. Everybody was, just living these characters. So it was a really interesting challenge, but it became something that I really love, and it's a part of my career that I would love to explore further, because I think there's just such amazing stuff coming out of performance capture. The video games and all the stuff they're doing. So I think it's really exciting, and
Yeah.
and I was so excited and so grateful to have a masterclass, in this film in performance capture.
Yeah, I think performance capture is something that it needs more attention. I mean, it's gotten we're way more at a point now than say 10 years ago, where it's much more widely
Yeah,
recognized. It's much more seen as like a legitimate art form. But I think there's still so much more to go. I think it's what you can do with it is beyond comprehension at times. Whenever I watch
yeah,
the movies, or even when I watch like the Avatar movies or anything like that, like you just see what they're able to do with just putting people in suits and tracking their movements, and what they're able to do with that and turn it into an entirely other world that's able to take what you're seeing in front of a camera and translate it into something that doesn't exist. And it's incredible.
it is. It's mind blowing. It is, and it's such an art form. And you're right. I think people are starting to kind of become more aware of it. I think Andy Serkis should have a room
Yes.
full of Oscars. An
Yes.
entire
Yep.
part of his house
Totally agree.
dedicated to Oscars. So hopefully people do start to appreciate that more, and I think that's what's really cool about what Wes is doing, and what they're doing with this one, with having the deleted scenes and having the side by side cuts. It's such a lovely thing as an actor to have that honored, to have that work honored, because if you don't know the world, before I got into it, I'd go to a movie and be like, oh yeah, I know there's actors behind these amazing avatars, but you don't really think about it. So it's nice for people to be invited in on the process, and to see how it all works, and see the work that everyone's doing. So it's really it's really cool that they're honoring the process, and it's great that people are starting to see what it takes a little bit more.
Yeah. So for a performance capture role, is when it comes to the audition process, I don't know what it was like for you trying to get on board this movie, but was it similar to a traditional role, or was there something else you had to do, or how did that work?
No, it it was very similar, and to be honest, it was the smoothest audition process that I've ever been through, and all the other actors say the same as well. And I think that comes from Wes Ball and Joe Hartwig, the producer and director. They work together a lot, and they trust their gut, which is amazing. Early on, they would always say best idea always wins, and they really honored that. A lot of people say that, and then it doesn't happen, but they just want to make good things, and you can feel their joy and their love in what they make. But yeah, it was an interesting process. It was a funny one. I heard the auditions were coming, and when I got the audition, it's always the same response when you see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes or Unbroken or Pirates of the Caribbean, you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I've got no chance. But they were really fun, and they were really well briefed auditions. You know, the characters were really well fleshed out. It was funny. I got the brief, and then the next day got another email from the Australian casting agent, Danny Long, and you know, this would have been passed on from Deb Zane in the States, who cast it. And they were like, please, everybody stop being apes, stop being chimps, please. Just play it for the truth. So even from the beginning, you knew that it was about the relationships. So when I put down the audition, that's what I tried to do. I tried to incorporate some aspect of the chimp. I found the day before, when I was doing a bit of research, I found this beautiful video of this baby chimp, and they'd sent in a tortoise that was a camera, and like the little baby saw through it instantly. But like when it was coming to like, you know, like the play and stuff that it would do with the camera, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can incorporate that into my audition without, you know, doing the stereotypical chimp stuff. And then just play have the essence of truth, but then have just little moments of showing the movement work. Yeah, so I think it was very, very similar to a normal audition. They didn't do any motion capture tests after that. You know, the next step after that, after the audition, was having a chat with Wes. You know, he's so lovely and so generous, and it's really funny. We got on, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is. Is this a callback? Is this an audition? And he was like, hey, dude, what do you want to talk about? And I was like, oh, not sure, Wes. What would you like to talk about? He's like, oh, I don't know. And then he showed me through all the storyboards for the film for like an hour, you know, and I knew from that, I knew that because I'd been in love with the franchise for so long, I wanted to do it. But I knew from that moment that he would be somebody brilliant to work with. Just his, you know, you've had a chat with him. The man's excitement is just so contagious. Like my favorite parts of the prep was the one day he talked us through the entire film, and he had to take a break in the middle because he was that exhausted, you know, but he'll just get so into it, you know, talking through bits, and he'd be like, then you come in and you're like, no, run. And then somebody else will come in and it's like, you got it. You know, it's just so addictive. I still want them to do a screening where they just mute the film and Wes talks everybody through the film, just bit by bit. But yeah, from that first chat, I just knew that he'd be a great director and just a joy to work with, and something I'll always remember, because it doesn't happen often, is at the end of that chat, he said, he's like, hey, look, dude, there's a process. You know, there's always a process with auditioning. It kind of, they see who they like, and then they submit it to the studio, to the higher ups, you know, to the people that run the show. He's like, there's a process, but we just wanted to let you know you did a really good job. And as an actor, that, you know, it's so lovely to hear that early on, because usually you just send off these auditions and you never hear anything again. And that's just the kind of environment that Wes and Joe create. It's just a really safe space. It's conducive to good work, and everybody gets to have input. And yeah, so it was a really amazing audition process.
Yeah. Speaking of Wes, because I was going to bring him up anyway, but yeah, I got to talk to him a few months ago. He seems like such a really fun, like you say, he's just full of energy. Just
Yeah.
really, really kind guy. And it sounds like he was really fun and exciting to work with. What was he like just as a director and throughout the entire filming process? What was that experience like working with him?
Yeah, it's such a joy, because he's just so into it. You know, he's as into it as we are. It's amazing watching him build it. Well, he's probably already pre-built it, but just watching this world that he has in his mind that he knows is going to be brilliant at the end of the day. Like, he's such a visual director. he was great. You know, he really trusted us, kind of left us alone in ape camp. You know, he'd duck in every now and then to see how we were going, but really trusted us with the prep, with the character prep, and to find our voices. And then when we got to the shoot, you know, he's really specific, and he knows how he does a lot of work. He does a lot of prep work. Um, and he knows the scenes that he wants and the moments that he wants, and he knows how it's all got to tie together. And it's great. It was a lot of fun working with Wes, just because of the mutual respect that everybody had for each other and he gives to us. And then just watching him get carried away and build this world, and you know, and he's so specific with what he wants with the world, but then he's so good as well with the emotional side of things. He's a really great, really specific director. And you know, he'll leave you alone, but like he won't say anything unless it's necessary. You know, and then all of a sudden he'll come out with these pearls of direction that you just go like, oh my God, that's amazing. You know, it's changed the whole scene. So it was such a joy to work with Wes, and you know, really excited to do it again.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. Everything I've seen,
Yeah,
he seems like he gets better and better with every movie he makes. He's really
yeah,
honed his craft. I think he was a great choice for this movie, so I'm glad he was the one that got to do it.
yeah,
Um,
me too.
Shifting things to your actual character, Anaya, I wanted to know, was there any traits or maybe like sort of physicality or anything that you specifically wanted to bring to the character, or that you ended up getting to bring a part of yourself to the character?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what we're talking about with the trust that Wes had and the team had with us creating these characters. And as I said before, the briefing was so good for these characters. It was always really important to me, even from reading the first brief. I knew that Anaya had a really beautiful arc, you know, and I'm so grateful and so glad of the arc that I got to play with Anaya. You know, it's really like, I love Anaya so much, and I love his arc, and I think it's really heartbreaking. So I was so glad I got to help bring that to life. So I knew that structuring the structuring it for myself, I knew that I wanted to start Anaya up here as to be as fun and as cheeky and as funny as possible. So then when we got to the other end of the film, it's, you know, it's as impactful as possible. So I really got to bring sort of, you know, I feel like deep down, Anaya's kind of got a lot of Australian larrikinism. You know, he's a bit of, you know, cheeky, a rat bag. Um, so I got to really play around with that, and that was a lot of fun to do in Ape School. You know, the teasing and the chasey and all that sort of stuff. So um, I just wanted to make sure that Anaya, for me, kind of represented innocence, um, you know, and kind of working out where his cheekiness comes from, which in my experience can be a lot to do with how you grow up and bullying. And you know, I was a bit bigger when I was a younger kid, so I got bullied quite a bit for being overweight, which led to me being a class clown. You know, having a deflection, having a coping mechanism, um, which I feel I got to bring with Anaya. You know, he's cheeky, he's fun, he's the first one to try anything. And then when he can't be as brave as he wants to be, it breaks his heart, you know. So um, I was really honored to get to play with that and to bring that onto the screen. And you know, I'm really proud of where Anaya landed. So it's and Ape School was just great for exploring all of that, all the stuff that you never see on the film, you know, on the big screen, the relationships of, you know, Soona, Noah, and Anaya before the film starts. How did they all grow up? That's all stuff we got to work on, and stuff that informs the performance, but it's not something that's necessary for the audience to know. It's just something that's necessary to create a character that's complex and 3D, and it's got, you know, depth to it. Yeah, so I was really, really grateful with what I got to play with Anaya, and fingers crossed we get to go again and get to expand that even further.
Yeah, that you mentioned the arc with him, and that was one of my favorite moments of him is that scene where he's afraid to go join Soona and Noah on their climb to get into the vault, and then he later rejoins them. He kind of finds his bravery, finds his courage. I really loved that moment, and that's one of
Thank
the
you.
elements that I think really made me fall in love with the character, and I'm just more excited to see where he goes from here. If he still retains that kind of goofball innocence, or if he kind of gets more of a maturity throughout the next
Yeah,
film or so. I'd really love to see where that goes.
yeah, me too. Can't wait.
Um, so was there anything about him, whether it was playing him both as an actor and getting to play him, and then both as a fan and as a viewer getting to just watch the character, what would you say is like your favorite thing about him? What was the thing that really stuck out to you that you loved the most?
I think the cheekiness has always really drawn me to Anaya, and the fun, the ribbing that the characters do to each other, um, and the comedy. There's elements of comedy in the trilogy, the previous trilogy, but it was really great. Rucker is hilarious in this film, but it was really great to get to play a character that got to be a goofball, dropping the bag full of gunpowder, or silly moments like that. Um, and I always looked for those in the scenes, because how heavy the film gets, and the audience needs a bit of respite sometimes. Um, so the humor of Anaya is something I've always loved, and it was a joy to play. And then I really enjoyed watching it. And then on the flip side of that, the vulnerability that Anaya then has to have to grow is something that I really love as well.
Okay, so I have a couple other questions about Anaya and Planet of the Apes in a little bit, but I want to
Okay.
shift things now to something I did not know about you until recently, and that is that acting is not your only talent. You're also a writer, and that
Yeah.
you
Yes.
recently wrote and starred in a short film called Dusty, which I had the pleasure of watching. First off, great work. I really thought it was a terrific short film,
Thank you.
especially as someone who's worked and done a handful of short films. It was very well done. I think it was. I could tell that there was a lot of passion and a lot of effort and a lot of time put into it. So very well done. I think you did a great job with
Thank
it.
you.
Um,
Thank you. That means a lot.
yeah, and you're not just writing, but your performance in it, I think, is fantastic as well. I think you did a great job on and off the screen. And I was genuinely a little caught off guard at the beginning because I didn't know what the genre was. I wasn't, the tone was. You only gave me the warning about kind of some of the subject matter. So that first minute, I was, oh, okay, that this is where we're okay. So I was very
Here
caught,
we
but
go.
yeah, but in a good way. I thought it was it's got a great dark sense of humor, which is right up my alley. And I thought it was really well done. It's funny, but it also has some really intense moments. It has intense themes. It taps into really dark material and really kind of somber material. And I was really moved by the end of it. I think you did a really great job with balancing tones in your script was, I think, the thing that I really took away from it. And I just wanted to know, like, what was your process for writing it, and how long have you been working on this?
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you, Josh.
Yeah,
That means a lot to hear. I'm really
yeah.
glad you enjoyed it. I I think I started writing Dusty about 2 years ago. And then kind of, something that I'd pick up, put down, pick up, put down. It started as a exercise. I'd been writing for a little while, and one of my best mates, Jeremy Lindsay Taylor, who's quite a really well-known Australian actor, he's an amazing actor, wanted to start exploring directing and shifting into more directing side of things. And he's like, "Why don't you write something for you and my partner Shannon, who plays the other character in the film?" He's like, "Why don't you write something for you guys? You practice your writing, and then I'll direct it as a little fun exercise." So we started thinking, and I where we live in Coogee, there's this really beautiful walk. It's called the Coastal Bondi to Coogee Walk, and it passes through the Randwick Cemetery, which is this incredible cemetery that overlooks the ocean. It's amazing. And there's just this idea popped into my head. And, you know, the synopsis of Dusty is a guy skips his best friend's wake, locks himself in his apartment to have a farewell of his own. And he does that by drinking 1 million beers and doing 1 million bags of cocaine. And throughout the course of the night, accidentally knocks his friend's ashes into a line of cocaine, accidentally snorts the ashes. She starts to come back. And he has they proceed to have the time of their lives until it spirals out of control. So I was walking through a cemetery and walking past the cemetery, and this idea popped into my head. It's like, wouldn't it be funny if, like, you accidentally snorted your best friend's ashes and they came back? It's like, oh, actually, there's some legs in that. So we started writing it. And I think the first draft was 35 pages. There was 6 characters. You know, so over the course of the years, just started making it more achievable as a short film and just consolidating. And that's kind of my process. But, you know, talking to a lot of writers, it's the process as well. You need a vomit draft. You know, usually the first draft of the film, everything is verbally said anyway, the way that I do it. And then you go, well, what doesn't need to be said? What can be done with a look or a move or a... So we refined and we refined it, refined it. And at the end of 2022, we decided to give it a crack to make it. So we got a couple of producers on board, and I sort of wanted to learn as much as I could, so wanted to produce that too. And from there, we started reaching out to people, and we're so lucky with the incredible talent that we got on board. Our production designer, Dane Hallett, does all the concept art for Alien, for the Alien films, and for Mad Max, and our cinematographer, Kate Cornish, is just a beautiful up-and-coming cinematographer. So we were just so lucky, and I think the subject matter really helped with getting people on board. So, you know, Dusty is a very personal story to me. It's based around losing a friend to cancer around 7 years ago. It was one of my best friends. It was a girl that I dated for a long time, and we had broken up, but we were still really close. And she passed away from cancer, and I dealt with it in not the healthiest way. You know, I used similar to characters that I play. You know, Anaya, I dealt with it with deflection, with humor, with partying, with, you know, keeping the good time going, never letting yourself down to feel. And I didn't realize I was doing that until a few years after, when I'd kind of caught myself off guard. You know, I was quite unwell, and think, oh, this is actually probably a little bit more dangerous than just partying. So when I started to write Dusty, it wasn't about Diana, about the girl, but it was about how I dealt with the grief of that situation. So, you know, I kind of pivoted the story and made it about grief, but, you know, for her privacy, and made the story just, you know, more about the toxic side of grief. Because I hadn't seen that a lot, you know, and I think it's a very Australian thing. And I think it's just a very human thing, the numbing culture, dealing with, we're never taught to deal with grief. And I dealt with it. You know, I would have described my grief as a comedy until it couldn't have been anymore. And that was the film that I wanted to write, you know, a comedy until it can't be a comedy anymore. Yeah, so the process was really interesting. Then we got into making it, and I just learned so much doing it, about myself as an actor. You know, I think I've learned more from writing about acting than I have from a lot of my acting training, just understanding structure and understanding pathos and all that sort of stuff. You know, that's all very important to my work, and learning the producing side of things, learning how film is made behind the scenes. I think it's a really great skill for actors to have, a great knowledge for actors to have, to see how everything works, how everything moves together. Helps you save everybody's time if you know where you need to be, or you know what's going on. So it was just a really amazing experience just across the board. You know, and we're so proud. We premiered it a few weeks ago at a festival in Melbourne called St Kilda Film Festival, and we're heading off to Perth next month for a festival called Cinefest Oz, which is a festival that's been close to my heart for a few years. for almost half a decade now. I think it was the first time I went, no, almost a decade. First time I went to Cinefest was in 2015. So it's really lovely to have created something and then getting to share it with things that have meant, festivals that have meant a lot to me for the last portion of my career. So we're really proud of it, and it was an amazing process. And I think whether a film ever gets seen by anybody or not, just what you learn doing it is it's just so valuable.
Something that you talked about with using humor as kind of a coping mechanism, using that. I think you did a great job at kind of translating that into the genre and into the tone of the movie and more than just like the experience of watching it. It felt like what you kind of talked about and how you were handling it. I think you did a great job at translating that to the screen and making me as a viewer feel what you were going through and how you were dealing with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so since writing kind of helped you with your acting, and would you say maybe directing is something you'd also like to try, or now that you've tackled acting, writing, and producing?
I think so. Yeah, eventually. I think I'd need to find the right thing. I don't know. I don't know if I would act in it. Yeah, not sure yet. I'd probably try and focus on one thing at a time because Dusty, I wasn't going to take on the as heavy a producing role as I did. I'm really glad I did now because I learned just so much. But that's the thing with making short films where people are donating their time when they get busy. You go, well, of course you have to go take this work. You have to go get paid. So our producers at times got really busy. So I kind of went, oh, okay, so I will do this now. And then you kind of learn as you go. But I think it would be great. I would love to direct, and I would love to have an experience in directing of just maybe just focusing solely on that. But who knows? Yeah, but it is definitely something that I'd be interested in.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the great directors that's always start out in acting. So I think that's all. It's always cool to see actors start to branch out and try everything. Because I'm not an actor. I'm much more of a behind the camera kind of person. Not a big in front of the camera
Yeah.
person, um, but something I always see is that when a lot of actors, they're constantly watching and studying what their director, what their producer, what their writer, what everyone on set is doing and taking it all in. And I think it's really cool to see you and so many other actors really starting to branch out and trying to kind of take on multiple hats and do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's really important, even if you never do it. Even if I never direct anything or ever write or produce anything again, having that understanding of how it all works, how the big machine of film works, because it is. You walk onto the set of Planet of the Apes and there's 500 to 1,000 people there. So knowing how all the cogs are turning to make this production, I think it's really valuable. As an actor, having an idea of how something might be edited, that can help and change your performance. And these aren't things that you want to think about in the moment, but it's all really valuable knowledge to have. Knowing the technicalities of our eye lines, knowing what lens sizes are, how that's going to translate, how your face will translate, what movement you can do. I think it's really, really valuable. And I've really loved writing, and I will pursue writing and producing and maybe eventually directing. But if I never do any of those things again, what it has done for my craft as an actor is so valuable. And it's stressful making a short film. I can't imagine how stressful it would be making a feature film. But all that stress was worth it for what I have learned. Kind of in reflection, it's just been an invaluable experience.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. It just being on set and working behind the scenes in general is chaos constantly. So
Chaos, absolute chaos.
I really can't imagine what it'd be like to make a feature film. But yeah, and so uh, for writing and producing, you say you might want to do it in the future again. Um, do you think for now you're going to prioritize acting, or is that something you're going to start doing more of here and there, or are you just going to see how it goes?
Kind of see how it goes. It's a very sort of bumpy journey as an actor. You know, it's, you've got your ups, you've got your downs. You know, I've had a very lucky year work-wise. I shot 2 feature films over in Perth at the start of the year, and you know, so that's sort of takes the majority of your brain power. So it's hard to sit down and write, hard to sit down and you know, start to put these things together. But it's a fantastic thing to be able to do in the meantime, and just as a creative outlet. You know, so I'll always be tinkering away with scripts and ideas and pictures, as a way to keep my brain going, and as a vehicle for my own growth as a artist. My first love has always been acting. That, you know, that might shift as I get older and as things change. But you know, I will always take the acting work where I can. And I've found, you know, I've found that these films at the start of the year were very intense and very sort of all day, every day. But I was writing Dusty during shooting Planet of the Apes because, you know, you weren't needed all the time. So it's great, you know, writing's great because you just take your laptop anywhere. You sit at home, you sit at a cafe, you do, you know, you can do it anywhere. You can do it on a bus, do it on a plane. So it's definitely something that I will, you know, I don't think, and I think for my career, it will be one or the other. You know, I'll act for as long as I can, whilst writing my own things and trying to create my own things. And yeah, so I think it's a real blend, and I think it's just, it's great what you learn from each of them. So doing them at the same times is, yeah, I think really beneficial for my craft.
That's awesome to hear, and I wish you all the luck with both acting and writing and producing. I think you're gonna. I really think you can go on to do some great things based on what I saw with this short. Speaking of, I think it was a great little short film. Definitely go check it out if you get a chance to. But I want to ask where/when would people possibly be able to watch Dusty?
Yeah, so we'll keep updating. We're in the festival circuit at the moment, so just applying, you know, just submitting for festivals. And so the next screening, if anybody who catches this is in Perth, come down to Bustleton for Cinefest. It'll be playing a couple of times between the 30th of August and the 8th of September. But yeah, if people want to get more info for Dusty, I keep it updated on my socials, and we've got an Instagram for Dusty. So it's kind of, it's tricky with the festival run because you sort of find out in drips and drabs of where you're going, where it got in, when it's going to play. But eventually, hopefully, it'll be able to be up for everybody to see. And yeah.
Okay, awesome. So gonna get back to Planet of the Apes for a little bit and then wrap things
Yeah.
up here. But another question I had about Anaya, and I don't know what you'll be able to say, but something, and like I mentioned earlier, something I'm really excited to see is just more of a focus on Anaya, Noah, Soona, and their chemistry, their dynamic, and where their story goes. Is there anything specific that you want to see from Anaya? Is there anything that you are hoping that the next film brings for this character and where he might go?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I think the possibilities are really, you know, they're endless of where these characters can grow. And I think that's such a great sign for an opening of a trilogy, a potential trilogy. You know, that there's just so many avenues. I think, yeah, of seeing more depth, and you know, this is just me talking from what I would love to see, because we have no idea. You know, nothing's been announced yet. Not sure what they're planning, where the stories are going to go. You know, Wes would kind of talk about stuff he'd love to do on set, but nothing's concrete. But yeah, I think developing those relationships further. I think, you know, Anaya went through a lot in that first film. So what does that leave on someone? You know, what marks have been left by Proximus? How much does that hurt? How does that shape a character? You know, does that push you off into the humor? Do you go further into that humor, that deflection, that hiding, or does it are there more visible signs of that sort of trauma that Anaya and these apes went through in the first one? So I think there's a lot of room for growth. Um, and I agree with you. I would love to see more of the trio and see those relationships develop further. And there's always room for conflict. Like, what is Soona and Anaya's and Noah's relationships become? What does the relationship between Soona and Noah become? And then how does that affect Anaya? The teens growing up, when love gets involved, how does that shift and shape relationships? Is it for the better or is it for the worse? So yeah, I just am excited, like you and like everyone else, to see these chimps grow and who they become and yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that next film, and I know you probably can't say anything even if you did have an answer for me, but I'm going to ask anyway. And you kind of already answered. But have you heard anything yet about if/when we might get a sequel potentially?
No, unfortunately not. And I wish I had heard something that I could keep from you, but I haven't.
Okay.
So I feel with a film this size, we'll probably all be finding out together through some kind of big article. But yeah, I'm not sure when. I kind of just go off timelines of the last three. Um, but that's useless
Yeah.
in this. It's a completely different beast. But I think looking at the film did well. People responded really well to it. It's a success on paper, with the box office and the reviews have been good. And um, I would love for it to go again. And I think we've made something worthy of going again. But we will see, and unfortunately, I don't have any more info than that. So I can't wait to chat again when we have more info.
I can't either. So that kind of does it for everything I have for you today. But before I let you go, I just want to see, do you have anything coming up, any projects in the works, either as an actor or a writer, producer, anything that you want to share?
Yeah. So as I said at the start of the year, I got to shoot a couple of films over in Perth, one called Birthright, which I'm really excited to share with everyone. It's another dark comedy by an amazing director, Zoe Pepper. It's her first feature film that she wrote. She's an amazing director. So that's going to be finishing up at the end of this year and then hitting the festival circuit. So if you see that name pop up, it's a really wild film, very dark. Keep an eye out for that. And another film called Frederickstown, which is kind of like a heist comedy about three brothers trying to pay off their mum's mortgage, set down in Albany in Western Australia, which is a really beautiful place. So that one was a lot of fun. And yeah, just that's the funny thing about being an actor is you finish a job like Planet of the Apes, and then you're back to kind of, oh, what do I do next? It's a very uncertain, very unstable industry. And I think what always keeps me going is the love of it, the enjoyment I find in it, because it's if you're doing it to get rich and famous, you're kind of in the wrong industry. Unfortunately, there's a lot of downtimes. So just prioritizing, keeping growing, keeping learning. I'm a big fan of kind of constant learning. So writing has been something amazing, producing, in between acting jobs to keep my brain ticking and keep that craft sort of happening. So always trying to do something to grow and to build on what I've done. So yeah, stuff coming up.
Great. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Where can people find you online if they want to keep up with you and keep up with what you're doing?
Yeah, so on Instagram, just at Trav Jeffery, very simple. Just find the profile with all the chimp pics and Dusty short film, but you can find a link through my personal Instagram. But yeah, that's kind of where I keep all my updates going on. I a bit too old. I miss the TikTok. The TikTok thing. So just
I'm
sticking to
off.
the good old Instagram for the.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm off that train too. So
Yeah, yeah. I missed the train, unfortunately. Yeah, but yeah, Instagram and just kind of online, stuff always pops up, when articles and things pop up. But yeah, I try to keep as people updated as possible on Instagram and things like that. But always love doing podcasts with people like yourself, just to it's just nice to have a chat and get to talk about the craft and the career and amazing films like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. So it's yeah, it's a real joy.
Well, Travis, thank you so much once again for taking time to talk to me today. Again, I loved the movie so much. One of my favorites of the year. You did a great job, and you were one of the highlights of the movie for me.
Thank you.
And so I'm looking forward to whatever you're doing next, whether it's as a human or an ape. And so, again, thank you so much for coming, and good luck with everything you've got going forward.
No, thank you, Josh. Thanks for having me. It's such an honor. I'm a big fan of your content, your page, and
Thank
it's
you.
just it's amazing to find someone who loves apes as much as we do and enjoys it as much as we do. And I've learned so much from watching your videos, so
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
that's
thank
awesome to
you.
hear.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much again. Have a good rest of your day.
yeah. Thanks, mate.
All right.
You too.